Okay guys, for this week's lesson and for this week's homework, you're looking at hazards in sport, so you need to be clear on what is actually meant by a hazard in sport, and also to be able to describe and explain possible potential hazards that can be found in a variety of different areas, such as in a gymnasium or on a field. So, knowing what a hazard is, well, a hazard is something that can cause an injury. It's not an actual injury, so for example a concussion or a cut, but a hazard is something that can cause an injury. So for example, water spilled on the floor in a sports hall would be classed as being a hazard. You also need to try and think of any other examples of hazards that you might find in sport. For example, one might be playing football without wearing any shin pads. So possible types of hazard, for example, poor physical fitness, so taking part in gymnastics activities where you need to be able to support your weight. If you're not fit to do that, then that can be a hazard. Having a poor level of skill or technique, so taking part in a sport where you might not necessarily have the level of skill to be able to perform it, so this can cause you an injury. Not doing a warm-up or a cool-down, so this is important because if you don't warm up, you could cause injury, so this is a hazard. The same for warming down. Dangerous training practices, for example, young gymnasts have spinal injuries due to being pushed too far by their coaches, so making sure you're not taking part in any training that is out of your ability. Dangerous environment, example, broken bottles on the field or chairs stacked in a hall which could fall and cause an injury. Other types of hazards are things such as weather conditions. So if it's too hot, this can be a hazard because it can cause dehydration, where you lose concentration and gives you fatigue. So you could possibly get an injury. And also taking part in cold weather as well can cause hypothermia. Wearing inappropriate clothing, so make sure you have the right footwear on in different areas. For example, a sports hall, making sure laces are tied up. Making sure clothing is loose, not wearing jewellery, not wearing rings or necklaces that could catch on other people or objects and cause an injury, so those are hazards. Lifting and carrying equipment, so making sure you know how to correctly and safely lift and carry equipment, so picking something off the floor, you need to bend your knees and have a straight back. Using inappropriate or damaged equipment is also a hazard, and also the behaviour of participants or other people in the class or on the area. For example, if a student throws a javelin out of turn, this is a potential hazard. You need to know potential hazards found in a variety of different areas. So for example, an outdoor adventurous area, whether it's on land or on water, there are lots of hazards that you could find. So for example, in camping, caving and mountain biking activities, bad weather or bad terrain could be a hazard, and you obviously need to make sure you have the correct clothing for these types of activities. Activities on water, whether it's angling or canoeing or kayaking or swimming, you need to check the deepness of the water. If you don't, it could be a hazard. Also things such as in mountain biking, on slippery rocks, those could be hazards as well. In a court area, so an outside court area such as a netball or basketball, litter can be a problem which people could trip on. You need to check these areas before you take part in sport on them. So other potential hazards could be things such as nails on the floor, broken bits of fencing or protruding fencing, wobbly posts or broken posts sticking onto the area, surfaces that could be affected by the weather, so a slippery surface is a hazard because you could slip over. Also on a playing field, for example on a grass rugby pitch, they tend to be quite long, so you need to check them beforehand. Other potential hazards you might find is a slippy surface, there might be litter on there, glass on there, it might be frosty, it might be icy, there might be uneven surfaces, so you need to check these before you take part in sport on these areas, because all these are types of hazards that can cause an injury. In a gymnasium or a sports hall or a fitness centre, you've got things such as equipment that could be hazardous. The floor needs to be clean and dry. Make sure there's no apparatus sticking out, and make sure that they're put away out of sight so they can't cause an injury. And also things such as checking wall fixings and make sure there's nothing protruding out that can cause an injury.